There's a lot of attorneys that want quick hitters, and attorneys do not process a case the right way. They don't work a case up the right way. And then and insurance companies get away with paying pennies on a dollar. So when they run up against somebody that doesn't, they say, no, we're not paying you, and you have to force them. And that's when it becomes important. Like when we've had conversations with Bart and with Tyler, that's when it becomes important that you have an attorney that tries cases.
Absolutely.
Because you're getting to have somebody that knows their way to say, okay, you're not going to do what's reasonable, then we're going to take this case over and we're going to prepare it in court.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries, of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!
Hey, everybody, it's time for a little bit more Law Light, brought to you by Foreman Watson Holtry, FWH Legal. We're here today. It's kind of gray outside, but we're at the high-rise white tower. PJ is in the house. How are you?
I'm good. You?
Good. Doing good.
You got candy? You're
Got
all
candy.
set.
I've got some sour nerds.
Yeah. I saw something the other day that got me really excited. Apparently, it was on Facebook, but they're selling packages that are just the Lucky Charms marshmallows.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Have you found them yet? Have you ordered any?
No, I haven't. But it's kind of the same thing as those cupcakes in the break room. I'm
calling your name.
Yeah, I'm doing everything I can to avoid the temptation.
You need just keep fighting as I eat my sour nerds.
Yeah, I gained 10
Chewy
pounds
sour nerds
over quarantine. So
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I've hit 300. So it's time to
Chill out.
It's time to get back down to
All right.
290.
Well, listen, we've been doing some fun things the last couple episodes, and really it's been on a good roll.
Yeah.
Came in after some guests, but got a couple things to talk about today. But I thought today would be a little bit more educational.
Okay.
Because we do like to use the podcast as a platform to help educate the consumer.
Absolutely.
Our future clients that don't know that they're going to be clients of ours, but this helps educate them. So we've used this from time to time to discuss some things like that. But before we do, word on the street is that you and I both about a week ago had to have our first COVID tests.
Word on the street. Yeah, we did.
Further word on the street is that you knocked it out of the park. You just pulled right up there, tilted the head back, and
No.
why not?
Truth be told, I am a baby. I don't have a very high threshold for pain. Mm-hmm. And as you know, Missy did my test.
Right.
And she did apologize before she did it.
It's always bad when the caregiver says, I just want to tell you I'm sorry before I do this to you.
Right. A friend of mine actually had a test done on her yesterday, and she did what I wished I had done, but she recorded herself having it done. And she had an adverse reaction to it as well, nowhere near as dramatic as mine. But I've had the flu swab before, so I thoroughly expected to be ready to go when I had the COVID test done. And no, I wasn't. It was the discomfort that you get with the swab, and there's a little bit of burning with the regular flu swab. But it wasn't anything that I would say was painful. COVID-19, however, it's like they're jamming a freaking pencil into your brain.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Okay.
So now I know that, you'll talk about it, I'm sure, your experience was a bit different. And I also only had one nostril done. But for me, it was the discomfort followed by searing pain. It was awful.
You would describe the pain from a COVID-19 swab, searing pain.
Yes, searing pain. My face clenched up so hard, and I scrunched my eyes closed so hard. For a good 2 or 3 seconds, I thought I was blacking out. I was like, I'm about to pass out from this. So yeah, it was. And then what's really funny is a guy that my stepdad works with was parked in the car next to mine and was having his test done. And he actually talked to my stepdad later that day, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I was parked next to your stepson, and yeah, he did not like his test." So I guess I was very, very more vocal than what I remember being.
Now, did you yell out loud or did you make noises?
I guess I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know if I made a noise during, but I know after
Would you say that you were disoriented for a short
I
period?
was so much so that I had to tell
delirious?
Missy. Yeah. Oh, I was definitely delirious. And then, of course, my eye was watering, and it felt like it was swollen. I still had that sensation of a pencil in my brain. And Missy kind of, she was giving the whole spiel about what to do after the test. And I actually had to be like, "Missy, you just have to stop talking for a second because I don't know what you're saying right now."
So it was a rough morning for you.
I think too, it was I thought I knew what I was going to expect,
right?
And it wasn't that.
Right.
I think, and it's funny because I had talked to a couple people about the test and told this same story about how extremely painful I thought it was and how god awful it was, and then they went and had their test done expecting that, and it was kind of word of mouth syndrome. To them, it wasn't as bad.
Well,
so,
it wasn't. It isn't. See,
I thought it was.
It's just it. I went there with no expectation. It's just like, okay, I got to do this, right? And I roll up there. Now for obvious reasons, they didn't, let Missy test me, and it's because she probably would have,
she would have jammed a pencil
an extra 2 inches up there. The lady just, I put my head back. And she said, "I'm going to count down from 5." I was like, "Oh, I guess 5 seconds. I can do anything for 5 seconds." And I guess nature kicked in for me because the natural inclination was to exhale quickly because my body wanted it out. So for me, it was like, trying to sniff it out, like push it out with reverse, ventilation. And by the time I had done that, it was over. I will tell you that my side effect from it was it looked like I had been to someone's funeral and was crying, like sobbing uncontrollably because the water from my eyes, it didn't stop. Like it was a good 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes when I pulled off. I was still wiping tears out of my eyes.
Yeah.
And that is a very real thing. There's no, I don't care who you are. It plucks something up there that just opens the tear ducts, man.
Oh yeah, I was crying out of one eye for
it is a
good 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, that was the crying or the watery eyes. You can't. But beyond that, it really was underwhelming to me, and so.
Right.
Now, would I, do I want one daily? No. There's other things I like a whole lot more than the COVID test. But yeah, it was just like, so it's funny. Two totally bipolar experiences to the COVID test.
Now, I don't. Did you have a headache afterwards?
No,
okay,
no.
see, I got a really bad migraine that lasted about 2 days afterwards, and I did talk to Amy because Amy had a test done, and she said that she too had a headache that followed it.
Well, now there is because it goes, I guess, close to or near the sinus cavity. It can create some sinus tension, which creates frontal headaches afterwards.
Yeah,
I
had
they
it.
know that. Yeah, but I didn't know.
I would so much rather do a blood test than the nose again.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is what we're stuck with, and hopefully we don't have any more needs to get them. But if you do suspect that you've been exposed, it's the right thing to do to quarantine, get negative tests. So that we can all be in a safe work environment. Anyway, enough about the traumatic experience.
Searing pain.
Searing pain. I just don't think I've ever experienced searing pain in my life. And I hope I don't. I mean, I've had nagging pain, burning, but searing, I don't know. I haven't had that.
The best way I could describe it, and I don't know if you've ever done this accidentally, but when you're soaping up in the shower, you accidentally get some soap in your urethra. I don't know if you've ever had that.
Probably has happened.
That's kind of that's the best kind of.
It's just, and I feel that pain when you just described that.
Right, because it's
I feel
that
pain.
raw flesh pain.
But the COVID-19 was nothing close to burning urethras.
That's the best way. I tried to describe that to Trina that way, and she's like,
"Yeah, stop!" Right?
How do you even do that? Like, that was her reaction.
Well, let's move on.
Yes.
All right, and let's bring this thing back to square and right on center point here. The educational part of this. We haven't done one in a while. I wanted to talk because I've been asked, and oftentimes you hear stuff about this. And since we handle so many personal injury cases that arise out of car wrecks,
right?
You know, a lot of people wonder what is the right thing to do at the scene of a wreck if you've been involved in a wreck. Okay, you know, what should I say? What shouldn't I say? Who should I talk to? Who should I not talk to? What should be, you know, do I need to document anything? Do I not need to document anything? And I think those are all valid questions. You know, car wrecks. I say this all the time to our clients. No car wreck is alike. Okay, they're all different.
Yeah.
All right. I have handled, you know, now over 2,500 car wreck cases, and guess what? I've never had one that's like the one before. Okay, they're all different. Now there are a lot of similarities in the aftermath of a wreck. Okay.
Right.
So the first thing you have to identify is that there are going to be, when giving advice to someone, when giving them from an attorney's perspective of looking at something after the fact, all right, and saying, well, here's what I wish you would have done, or here's what you could have done, or here's you have to first divide the wrecks into, is there something life-threatening going on at the scene of the wreck or not? Because if there's something life-threatening, then your mind is not going to be anywhere close to doing any of these things that I'm about ready to advise. Okay,
right.
You're going to have emergency personnel on scene that are going to be extricating you, or after extricating you, addressing your needs, you know, for life and preservation of life, and, you know, then getting you away into a facility that can treat you. Okay. So the advice in those cases is totally different than the advice that I would give someone who, while injured or while shook up, is there and is going to be forced to handle certain things. Okay.
Right.
So you've been in a wreck. I know that. We've referenced it. I've been in several. The very first thing that I would tell people is, do not get out of your car if it's dangerous to get out of your car. Because let's face it, a number of wrecks happen on busy roadways. And the last thing we want you to do is to crawl out the passenger door of your car because you're scared about getting out, and then you fly in front of another vehicle, or so once you have gathered your senses, you know, take a look around and make sure it's safe to get out of your vehicle. Now, there are always the exceptions to the rule. If your car is smoking, or you believe you smell smoke or fire, you know, you feel, then you got to get out quick. Okay.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said about gathering your senses, trying, you know, figuring out where you do hurt, or what, you know, can you move? If you can move, can you get out? If you can get out, you know, do it safely. All right. You know, because you don't want to compound the problem by, you know, getting out in the middle of a dangerous intersection and something else happen. So, you know, the first thing is that, you know, just exit the car when you can. And if you can't exit the car, then start yelling so people know you're trapped. You know, let them know you are trapped and, hey, I need out. Okay. The next phase of this is addressing the person or people that were also involved. Okay, because before law enforcement gets there, you're probably going to have an opportunity to have confronted the person that caused the wreck, or if you caused the wreck, confronting them. All right. my advice to you is, as difficult as it may be, is not to express anger, temperament. Nobody walks out their door today and says, gee, I hope I get in a wreck. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so if they if they've been involved in a wreck, even if it was their fault, if they carelessly ran a red light, or if they were on their phone, now they made the decision to do those things, but they didn't intend to be in a car wreck.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
They may have made bad choices. And yes, you have every right to be upset with them. But if you're at the scene of the wreck and you're yelling and screaming and cussing, I can guarantee you that will come up. Okay? If you make comments about your car, like, oh my gosh, then later on you're talking about your injuries, there's going to be testimony that the person was more concerned about their car at the scene of the wreck than they were the fact that they couldn't use their right arm. Okay? So they're going to use anything you say
Absolutely.
in that conversation. So that conversation should be held to a minimum. Are you okay? Have you called for help yet? Has anybody called you? Leave it to minimum, and then when they get here, let's all sort it out. That's what I would say. Okay, I wouldn't say, "Hey, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I did this or that." I wouldn't get into any reliving or recapping of what had just happened. I would ask, "Are you okay?" And let's just wait for the professionals. Let's wait for law enforcement to get here, and we'll sort everything out.
Now, would you say that's the best course of action if you're approached by the person?
Right.
Otherwise, don't approach them and start a conversation.
I wouldn't necessarily approach them. In all candor, if you feel like that person has been really injured and and you're the only one there, then you need to address them and try to
definitely
assist and help. But in general, conversations between people at wrecks need to be held to a minimum and say, well, let's just sort it out when they get here. Okay? Try to keep mental note of anybody that walks up to you and says they saw the wreck or I heard the wreck and that they're there, because those people are going to be very important. The police, while we hope that they always get that information, don't. Okay?
Yeah.
They don't. And so once you've gathered yourself and if there has been, try to see who's around and ask, did you see it? Did you hear it? where were you? And if so, and say, would you please talk to the police? At least invite them to talk to the police. Because of everything that happens, the one thing I know you've said, it happens before you know it. It's just so quick. It happens so fast.
Yeah.
You trying to recall it all, it happens so fast, is jumbled, But eyewitnesses that see it, man, they can tell you. They can say, yeah, he went across the lane and into the, they can tell you stuff like that. And so make sure that you identify and request that they stay around, talk to the police. If they say they can't, at least try to ask them for a name. What's your name? What's your first and last name? Try your hardest to do that.
Well, I know so many times doing these presentations, I can't tell you how many times that witness testimony corroborates what happens at the scene, and it almost always works for the person that was injured in the wreck and didn't cause the wreck.
That's right.
So it's always a very important and vital piece of the puzzle.
You even got a chance because a guy wanted to give his statement about what it was a case. The case is still going, so I don't want to get too detailed. But he had been in the intersection where the motorcycle pulled out, and he wanted to come in and tell us what he knew. And I wasn't going to be able to be here. So you conducted the interview. You remember that?
Yeah.
And I mean, that interview is a difference maker in that case.
Oh, yeah. It helped. I can't tell you how much it really helped back up his story.
Exactly. So that's, I could give you example after example after example. I had a case that happened right up here at Frederica and Parrish. And there were 5 witnesses to that wreck. And it was amazing in that case is that the first 3 that we took all saw something different, okay? But then the next 2 corroborated one guy, one of the other ones. So I had 3 that saw it the same way and 2 that were totally out in left field.
Right.
And the jury, that case went to trial, and the jury determined that the scenario that those 3 saw and testified to is how it happened. And so, again, the power of an eyewitness and the testimony of an eyewitness, It's very important. So
Yeah,
try
it's
to
major.
identify those people. Give an honest statement to the police officer. But listen to me carefully. If you're not sure, then tell the police officer, I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure. I think I may have, but it happened so fast. If you're not sure, don't talk, because it's going to show up in the narration of that report. There's the Kentucky Uniform Traffic Collision Report has a part that's the narration, and it's what you tell the police officer, and then he starts talking about Unit 1, Witness 1, Unit 2, Witness 2, and says what these people tell them at the scene of the wreck. A lot of times, just like giving a story to a newspaper, I mean, I know this has happened to you. You give a story to the newspaper, and then you read it, and you're like, was that person even listening to me?
Yeah,
right?
It's completely different.
It's right.
Yeah.
And so, that's why unless you are absolutely certain, then you don't mention it to that police officer, okay? So, because issues of time, feet, and distance are so critical in this. And if you make something like, I saw him, he was 2 car lengths away. Well, you're stuck with that statement. He was 2 car lengths away. And are you sure he was 2 car lengths away? So we're always, people, and God bless them, they want to help the police. I mean, that's our inclination. I want to help you, but if you're not sure, then make sure you don't say it, okay? You need to, if you can, try to document the scene of the wreck with a few photographs, where the cars ended up, what the cars looked like, because once those cars are moved and you're taking pictures of them over in a wrecker service or a place where they're being held, body shop, they look different when they're parked in it next to all these other cars. I tell people a lot of times it was a bad wreck, right? But then they take your car and they put it next to this car that was mangled, and then it makes your car look like it wasn't involved in a serious wreck. So try to get a few, and I noticed in your work, you love putting scenes of wreck pictures into your presentation.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Context. I don't always just use the photographs that were given at the scene of a wreck. Sometimes I'll end up getting I'll go get satellite photos and stuff to recreate the collisions and how they happened. And a lot of those times it'll happen in a place where it's kind of hard to tell exactly how everything played out or exactly where it played out. I've had only one photograph from the scene of the wreck, and I was able to use landmarks in the background of that photo to then link up with the satellite photos that I've gotten and to create it accurately. So it's like you said, it's completely different than when it's towed and put in a lot somewhere. You can tell the story so much better if you have those points of reference to be able to see how things played out. Cell
phones, or everybody's got them. Even the old flip phones still have cameras on them.
Oh, yeah.
So just snap a few pictures from different angles of the damage to the vehicles, of the scene of the wreck, where the vehicles ended up resting, and those kinds of things, and then hang on to those, okay? Now, I want to talk to you. Let's assume for the second that you're thinking, man, my elbow doesn't feel right, but I'll be okay, or I just don't feel good, but I'm sure that's just my nerves from being in this wreck. That is the very worst thing you can do. Gaps in treatment after a wreck are damaging to your case. You can go 3 or 4 days and not get treatment, and then have a very legitimate injury that was caused by the wreck, but all they'll talk about is, it took you 4 days to get to the emergency room. Okay.
Right.
If you have any question, now I'm not making a judgment call for you on whether you should ride in the ambulance. There is no harm, especially in Kentucky where we have no fault. There is no harm in taking yourself to an emergency room or to an urgent care or to a doctor's office and having a physical exam done. And when you do, when you're talking to any healthcare provider, whether it's an ambulance driver, whether it's the triage nurse, or you tell, be complete, be thorough. Say, I'm having a little bit of discomfort in my right shoulder. I have a little bit of discomfort under my left armpit here by my ribs. My right knee. Include anything, even if it's a 1 out of 10. Okay, because a lot of times it's those injuries after 3 or 4 days that start to manifest themselves. And insurance companies love to say, well, when you were at the emergency room, all you mentioned was your left shoulder. You didn't say anything about your right knee, and it ends up being the right knee that has a patella tear or a meniscus tear that was a result of the wreck. Even though it might seem minute to you at the time, if you feel it or perceive it, then mention it.
I can say this from experience, and I believe I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I know I have talked to this or about this many times with clients, because one of the things that you tell clients when they come in and do a video is like, look, we don't need to move forward until you are 100% absolutely sure that you are not going to have any more further issues or injuries or nothing's going to get exacerbated. When people get into wrecks, unless you are, catastrophically injured somehow where there's no doubt about it in your mind, a lot of people will do that self-assessment. A lot of people don't want to have to deal with the fact that I've just been in a wreck or even potentially injured in a wreck. Right. It's, you have a million things you need to do, and now suddenly this is one giant inconvenience that you have to deal with that's going to get in the way of everything else, whether it's I have a trip coming up or whatever the case may be. Yeah. So I think people go through a level of denial where they're like, I'll be fine, I'm fine. It's not a big deal. And I did that. I was basically sandwiched between an SUV and a van. But when I did, I slammed my left arm into the door. And it hurt. But I was like, I'll be fine. And I noticed my arm felt kind of weird at the time. When paramedics got there, they asked me if anything was hurting. And I didn't think much about my arm. So I was still having some issues with my elbow after the wreck. But I thought, it's probably just residual. I'll be fine. I didn't think like maybe there will be a bigger problem, something I should deal with, something I should look into. And I ended up settling the case. But now what's happened is there's a ulnar nerve that goes through the where your elbow, the two bones meet. What happened is that nerve got dislodged, and I didn't realize it at the time. I just kind of let it go. And now every now and then it will like pop out from between my bones, and I'll bring my arm down on it, and it shoots like, it feels like
searing pain.
No, it's electricity, and it shoots up my forearm, and it goes into my pinky and my index finger. How many times have we had clients come in that talk about how they have that nerve pain in their arm, and it shoots up into their pinky and their... So I let that go, and now I've looked into that problem, and it basically says that in order to get it fixed, I'm probably going to have surgery to get that nerve put back in place to where it doesn't keep doing popping out. And who has to pay for that? I have to pay for that.
So that's a perfect testimony as to the general advice that I'm giving, and that is, if it even raises its head, mention it. Mention it.
Yeah.
They may not treat it, but mention it.
Yeah. Oh, it was a minute problem at the time, much bigger problem now. Following
this course of advice that I'm giving people at a scene of a wreck, tell your caregivers, get it seen, get it looked at, because you get $10,000 worth of coverage, and it doesn't going to increase your rate. It's not going to do anything to your rate if you make a PIP claim, because we have a no-fault state. Go get seen, mention everything that's wrong, so that there is a document of that. Yeah. So that if it does become a bit, hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it doesn't. That's why I tell people, I hope you get better.
Right.
But if you don't, then you need to have the document trail that verifies that you were getting treatment when needed, that you were voicing concerns about these things, so that it can be compensable if you have a case against the person that caused the wreck. We're making good progress here. So what comes after every wreck is that if it's just two vehicles, there are immediately 3 insurance companies involved. There's your insurance, your car insurance. There is the car insurance of the other person that was involved in the wreck, and then there's your health insurance, okay? And when you get to the hospital, if you've ever been to the hospital before, guess what billing information they're going to have in there? They're going to have your health insurance. And guess what's going to get billed if you don't tell them that it's actually a car wreck? They're going to bill your health insurance. And your health insurance is going to come after you and say, we want our money back if they find out that it was a car wreck, okay? So if you're involved in a car wreck and you go get medical care, make sure you tell them it was a car wreck, and make sure you present a proof of your auto insurance so they know who to bill. They will bill your auto insurance under your personal injury protection coverage.
Yeah.
Okay? But that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to insurance, because within days, you're going to start getting phone calls.
Yep.
You're going to get phone calls from your insurance company. You're going to get phone calls from the other insurance company. And then becomes a maze. You'll have an adjuster that's assigned by your company to look at your car. You'll have an adjuster that's assigned by your company to handle your medical issues. You'll have an adjuster that's assigned by the liability carrier to take in the claim, just to take the claim in. But then they assign it to an adjuster for the car wreck and another adjuster for the bodily injury part. Okay? So now all of a sudden, you have a person who's on their way to the grocery store to pick up a few things. They're involved in a wreck. They don't have a car. They've been to the hospital. And now they have a bunch of people calling them, and they have no idea who's who.
Right.
And what do? They start talking.
Yep.
And when they start talking to these insurance adjusters, then comes the problem. They'll take statements of them and have them, well, how many lanes were out there and how many traffic signals? Now, can you rethink that a person can remember all that kind of stuff, but they get stuck with a recorded statement that they're bound to? So it is my advice that when the insurance companies start calling, that is your trigger for saying, I'm going to go at least speak to an attorney. Maybe I don't hire him. Maybe I don't hire her. But I am going to talk to a lawyer. Before the insurance company is involved, you should have legal counsel. I'm not saying that because I'm an attorney. I'm saying that because I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and this is not an exaggeration, who have been contacted by insurance companies before they come see me, and they've been offered $500 to make it all go away. And in those cases, we'll end up 8-9 months later, because we handled their case the right way, getting them thousands of dollars as opposed to 500. And so if the insurance companies start calling, that is your trigger to know, at least consult with a lawyer. You don't have to hire, but consult.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, I can say that whenever going the wreck that once again brought me here, the elbow wreck, their insurance company called me, and I was on the phone with them, and it felt less of like an interview, and it felt more like an interrogation.
Right.
Because they were hard pressing me to answer questions that I didn't have answers for. And they would try to use tactics where, if you wouldn't give a definitive answer on it, they would be like, well, do you think maybe it could have been this?
Right. And
they would try to get you to give them some sort of answer, whether you knew or not. And I just kept going, I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. I don't have the answer for that. And, they would not let up. And then, of course, it all ends with them going, all right, well, we've looked at this, and this, and we're ready to cut you a check right now for $3,000. And that was before I had talked to anybody else as to whether or not the car had been totaled or any of that. Right. And, of course, that $3,000 won't even cover the fixing of the frame of the car. Mm-hmm. And at the time when you're on the phone with them and they say $3,000, that seems like a lot of money because for me, some middle-class guy, yeah, $3,000 is a lot of money. And I didn't know what was going on. And as far as I knew, maybe $3,000 would cover everything I needed. But I still didn't accept it because I told them, I said, look, I can't agree to this because I don't know. Right. I don't know what's going to happen.
The story that you tell is not just your story. I hear it all the time. We hear it all the time. I have made a living. I have nice house, car, take nice vacations, not because insurance companies do the right thing. I've done that because insurance companies try to get cute, and when they have had enough, they come see me. And when they see us, then we're able to take over, and we control the communication with the insurance company. We control what they get. And a lot of times we bypass them. We just file a lawsuit because you need to get to the bottom. And this is where I'm going to wrap this phone call up. Evidence preservation. The more information that you give a lawyer, let's take it outside of car wrecks. When you sit down with a lawyer for a first consultation about anything, they're going to start seeking information. They're going to start asking questions. They're going to start looking at things. They're going to ask you, well, do you have this document? Do you have that document? Do you have this policy? Do you have that policy? Do you have that receipt? Do you have that promissory note? They're going to start gathering information. The more information that a lawyer has, the more powerful she or he is. You are the first person in control of preserving that evidence. If you may get a receipt for a prescription, keep it. You may get a prescription for, you had to have it. A doctor wouldn't give you a new prescription for your eyeglasses that were mangled in a wreck until you had an eye exam. Keep it. You may think, oh, I'm just going to get some Motrin. Keep it.
Yeah.
Okay? Photographs, receipts, insurance. Keep on your phone call log. Don't delete your voicemails. If you're getting voice calls from insurance companies, keep those. The attorney wants to hear those. So the last step of this, what do I do after a wreck, is think preservation. Hold on to it. Be a pack rat when it comes to the wreck, okay? Because once you get to an attorney and you can give all of them that, you're ahead, all right? I want to share one story in closing. I was involved in a very, very, very tragic wreck and story that took place in Georgetown, Kentucky. I was hired 6 days after the collision that happened on the interstate. Within 2 days, I had hired an accident reconstructionist, an engineer from Purdue, to meet me at the scene of this wreck. When we got out there, the scene of the wreck had been reconstructed, we know, by at least 2 other people, we think 3. And the way we knew that is that each of them used a different color paint. And there were marks that they leave documenting the scene of a wreck. We've all come up where a wreck's happened and you see the orange paint. It shows,
right.
They mark off where the tires were. They show where they think the area of impact was. They note certain things so that when they photograph it, they can point to those things, okay?
Yeah.
We know that we were 3rd or 4th in line, and we got out there, PJ, 8 days from the date of the wreck. 8 days. That's fast. Because most people that are calling me, they're calling me, a month or 2 after the wreck. They're calling me when they've had enough because the insurance company is now starting to deal with them unfairly.
Yeah.
They feel pushed around.
Yeah.
By 2 months, that insurance company has probably gotten a whole lot more information than you would ever dream. So the only way we can combat that, the only way that we can beat that, is if people are educated to keep everything, document, be thorough in their description of things to medical providers, keep the pictures, keep the voicemails, keep those things, so that when you come to us and we start grabbing that information, we're not behind. Okay? So that's my last piece of advice is you can't over preserve information. Sometimes these aren't as many laughs for you and I. We don't
Right.
get to giggle and have fun and call each other names and stuff like that.
Right.
Although we did talk about urethra burning in this.
That's true.
But
We can't go back from that.
But we do have to have these. The whole dream or vision of doing a podcast was to help listeners hear some legal things that they need. Even some of the interviews that we've done of some of your friends, filmmakers, artists, it has been helpful because they always bring it back to a legal issue.
Right.
And that's the whole creation of the podcast, why we did it. But sometimes when you get into them, they're a little bit more mundane. But we try to keep it to where it's helpful.
Yeah.
And you sharing your story that as a person that went through it, not knowing what you know now, it's very beneficial,
Right.
and I hope that people appreciate that.
Well, I think the one thing that I've learned is, especially, because even now, I'm not an attorney. I didn't go to law school. Everything I've learned about law over the past 5 years, I've done here. But I think the one thing that I have learned, and it's probably the saddest thing, we have to have insurance for so many different things. We're required to have insurance on our car. And the whole purpose behind it is to protect us. That's the basis for insurance, is to protect us in the event that something happens. People who haven't had to deal with insurance situations, they hear horror stories, but they don't know it firsthand. But I've dealt with it firsthand in my personal life, and I've dealt with it, I deal with it here. I see it through the eyes of other people who are dealing with it. People want to attack your position all the time, saying like ambulance chaser and stuff like that. But let's be honest here. If the insurance companies were doing their jobs and protecting people and doing what they were supposed to be doing, the whole purpose that they even exist, people wouldn't have to go seek what you do for a living because these insurance companies don't want to help. They'll take your money your entire life. 50 years, you've never had a problem. And now suddenly you need their help. You need the whole point of their existence. And they want to screw you over. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to help. Mm-hmm. So they don't want to fork over the cash that you've been giving them your entire life.
Right.
And yeah, so it's an extremely sad thing that I see all the time.
One of the things that I want to say is that, there's a lot of insurance adjusters who have these jobs with insurance companies, and they're trained by the insurance company to not overlook ways to save the insurance company money. And I understand that. It's a business.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the attorney's job is to facilitate the channel of information to these adjusters so they're forced to do what they do. Okay.
Right.
Because when that adjuster has a tough job, right? They're working for the company and they're been told you save us money. But if you can arm them with the information and put them in the position where they can then go and easily say, look, this is, then you have done a service to your client. Now you're right. It shouldn't be that difficult. It's difficult as they've made it. But your job as an attorney is to arm the adjuster with the information to pull the money out of the company.
Right.
And that's what we do.
And that's not to say, and what I said a second ago, that's not to say that there aren't good insurance adjusters out there. It's not to say that there aren't people that aren't legitimately trying to help the customers.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, they are trying to protect the company and save them money.
The business model is broken.
They are ready to write me a $3,000 check.
Right.
And let me tell you this. Could I use $3,000 right now? Hell yeah, I could use $3,000 right now. I would love to have $3,000. But here's the thing. It sounds great when they're telling you over the phone. They're ready to fork over $3,000 right now. It's not over with yet. And they may be giving you $3,000, but they're saving the insurance company an additional $20,000 because you're like, oh yeah, I'll take that $3,000 right now.
Sign a release.
They're
and then you're
not
done.
helping. That's not helping you. That's not even putting a Band-Aid on the problem.
Right.
That's like throwing some Neosporin on the ground next to you.
Right. And there's reasons. Profit drives the whole thing. But there's also that number one is that they understand, especially now with COVID going on, people are in dire economic straits. So they understand people will take that money. The other reason that they do it is because they get away with. There's a lot of attorneys that want quick hitters, and attorneys do not process a case the right way. They don't work a case up the right way, and then insurance companies get away with paying pennies on a dollar for what a case is really worth. And so when they run up against somebody that doesn't, they say, no, we're not paying you, and you have to force them. And that's when it becomes important. Like when we've had conversations with Bart and with Tyler, that's when it becomes important that you have an attorney that tries cases.
Absolutely.
Because you're getting to have somebody that knows their way to say, okay, you're not going to do what's reasonable, then we're going to take this case over and we're going to prepare it in court. So anyway, lots of moving parts. We've gone a little long. I'm sure it's probably a long one.
Yeah,
but,
that's okay. But hey, we showed a lot of conviction in this one.
And so until next time, this has been Travis and PJ with Law Lite from Foreman Watson Holtry, FWHlegal.com. Hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!